Spiritual bypassing and cosplaying is keeping you stuck, even if you do come from a rooted indigenous culture. I wish I learned from indigenous stewards of yoga when I first started my journey into practice, let alone teaching. Hi, I'm Payal, yoga educator and embodiment coach for sensitive visionary cycle breakers, and I'm not done yet criticizing the Western yoga industry because it's an effing pain in my ass, because I often come across entitled, ignorant, quote, teachers not of the culture who think they know more than someone who comes from the culture of yoga, which is Sanatana Dharma, yoga's roots and context. There is no Sanatana Dharma without yoga. And to understand this, you have to go beyond reading books by non-native people and even translations. Sorry, you're not going to learn the authentic pathway through non-indigenous agendas. In that sense, this episode isn't for those interested in colonizer and political narratives and reshapings of history and facts around what is a spiritual discipline that has a cultural context tied to a specific way of life lived by dharmics across the globe. It's important to question who creates Hinduphobic narratives to erase and violate our knowledge systems. Why are they hijacking yoga? What is their agenda? What truth do they not want you to be aware of underneath all of the noise they're making? If you learnt from stewards of the tradition, you know that you don't bring in personal opinions and political agendas and superimpose it onto yoga, let alone in a Western yoga class. There is a reason why you get to enjoy this practice, because Hindus kept it alive, undistorted, free from bias through oral tradition, the Guru Shishya Parampara. And this is true of all Vedic knowledge, which many Westerners, not all, but many, love claiming ownership over, love saying they made it better, they improved it, just so they can make a profit, not knowing that Sanatana Dharma is evolutionary in itself. It moves with the times. It's just that there have been many ongoing attempts to corrupt its essence by those who came to invade the land of Bharat and those who are more loyal to their violent ideologies than to the sacred, timeless knowledge that they love to go to heal themselves. I find that many of those not born into a dharmic culture come with their propaganda and bias from their own religions and ideologies. Many have even succeeded in creating a self-loathing within Hindus who now identify as, quote, South Asian. Another attempt to disguise yoga of its roots and strip it away from its source. Do check out my podcast episode on narcissism and colonialism, the same demon, to understand more. This is in episode 3 of season 1. The predatory and supremacist entity keeps itself alive through distancing itself from the original culture, ostracizing the culture. It needs sameness to survive. It fears difference, because difference and diversity of thought and practice is a killer of its belief systems, whose inherent quality is no growth and no maturity. Yet, in Sanatana Dharma, there are no two dharmics alike. And this is its beauty, the freedom to think independently, the freedom to follow one's own path and purpose. The path itself is of discovering one's own truth. Experience is king, not blind belief. Now, this way of life is a massive threat to those with political agendas, those who must have their belief in only their view, whether it's in the context of religion, politics, or social justice. What good is your yoga if you don't have a space free of bias to ultimately come to your own conclusions, to know your own thoughts and your own truth? In the Western yoga industry, which is also co-opted by colonized, quote, South Asians, you are forced to believe in one narrative, the thought process of the teacher telling you where to put your attention, what cause to attach yourself to. This is not yoga. What colonized or New Age spirituality does is distract you from reality, whether that is getting someone to join your social cause or buy that New Age spiritual course. Let me do another 300-hour yoga course. Let me do a few hundred hours of shamanic training and 3 hours of cacao ceremony training and call myself a master of someone else's culture. Better yet, let me channel the aliens for their opinions. Let me do everything except find indigenous and native resources or sources of nourishing transformational knowledge not touched by, number one, white supremacy and the colonial mind, and number two, the predator energy, not necessarily just originating from white cultures, but any invasive ideology that fears diversity and difference instead of allowing this way of life to flourish. When we are cut off from our ancestral roots, which are tethered to a particular land, when the body and land are separated, whether by choice or by violence, there is going to be a fragmentation in the psyche, the mind. This disconnection creates a resistance to the real. It's far easier to follow and acquire half-baked and diluted knowledge than to face the real demons, do the inner work, and take real-life action steps to change your state and reality. Spiritual bypassing is rife, and cosplaying indigeneity is keeping you stuck, keeping you from taking real-life action steps. What do I mean by cosplaying indigeneity? Taking up the mantle of teacher and master after a few months of training given by other colonizers, those cut off from their own ancestral roots. Wearing the cultural dress of the practice you're engaging in or teaching, and putting up statues of deities in your studios without any respect towards its living communities. It's when you have not gone to the source of the culture to educate yourself in a particular spiritual and cultural tradition. It's when you gaslight yourself and others by denying yoga's roots and context of Sanatana Dharma. It's not learning from the source culture which has preserved yoga for you to now enjoy, albeit in a bastardized form. I've worked with a lot of, quote, Western yoga teachers and attended numerous Western yoga classes across the last 2 decades. Many of these, quote, teachers are in terrible spiritual crisis. I'll be honest, I've observed a pattern of mental health issues. Many white wellness teachers and even studio owners hold on to a lot of repressed anger and project their anger, or better yet, powerlessness, onto brown and black bodies. I'm speaking from years of experience of this fragility in these spaces. What is a bully but someone who feels powerless? Many colonized, self-appointed masters of other people's cultures are deeply depressed and lost individuals who teach personal opinions rather than yoga. This is the problem, especially when you have set yourself up as authority or leader and you haven't even established or healed your own roots. So what's the solution? Logic says to do the opposite of the problem. Heal your roots first, then go dabble in another cultural tradition and seek to become its master. This is also true of those from, quote, South Asian descent, and specifically those from dharmic cultures who have been taught to loathe their own culture and bodies and outsource their sovereignty to New Age spirituality, which is mostly colonized forms of their own culture. And if your roots are utterly lost, be humble when you seek to heal yourself through cultural practices that have already been wounded from colonial violence and erasure. The smart action step is to learn from indigenous stewards. You can get your rooting from there, whatever your background is or whoever you are, because the original structure of teaching and learning is set up so as to nurture growth and change in a supportive, safe, and methodical way. Spiritual bypassing and the continual search to try and heal yourself from plastic spirituality is going to keep you stuck. Look to your roots, establish your wholeness from there. Build a relationship with your ancestors, even if you do not know who they are. This will involve Shraddha and Bhakti, a trust in life, a trust in the process, and deep devotion and trust in the power of your lineage. Change will come when you understand that you are a seed planted somewhere. Tend to this root and to the soil, your environment. Tend to making yourself well again. Establish a clear and stable mind. How can you possibly teach or guide without this foundational piece? Chitta Shuddhi, the cleansing of the mind through purification practices, is a requirement to even become a yoga teacher. Finally, surround yourself with true seekers who do the self-inquiry work, not egoic cosplayers who parrot cultures and project their biases onto their students, including racial bias, as in life, as in classroom. More on the importance of who you surround yourself with in the next episode. If you are a sensitive cycle breaker with a big desire and dream and you are stuck in your life, something is holding you back from taking big real life action steps, then book a clarity session with me. Let's get to the root issue and weed it out. And for serious yoga seekers only, download my free decolonial toolkit and check out my online program to decolonize your yoga practice and put yourself back on the dharmic path. Details in the description box below. Rise up, warrior.